Hi everybody, welcome to Out of Character. I'm your host, the Faulty DM, and today I want to talk to you guys about two things. An idea that I came up with called an arc concept and a character arc. So I'm going to start off by talking about the character arc. So what is a character arc? Well, a character arc is pretty much the internal struggle that a character goes through due to the external forces of the plot that is or the story that is happening around them and how they respond to it and the inevitable change that the story forces that character to go through, whether it be minimal, great, or terrible. Now, character arcs are extremely important and they're prevalent through all forms of literature and media. Pretty much any story worth retelling has an amazing character arc in it, where you'll see a character go from one individual to another individual. And the reason that they're so important is because the audience can relate to it. And the reason the audience can relate to it is because we as individuals, as human beings, have all gone through things in our lives that make us who we are today. Pretty much, we've all gone through our own character arcs. We've gone through our own crucibles that have made us and defined us as who we are. We've gained wisdom or we have ignored wisdom. We have either gone down a downward spiral or we've come out on top for the better or for the worst. But when you see that played out on screen, it's instantly relatable. You can instantly feel like that character is not a fictional character. Like they are a living, breathing person with emotions and who are responding to this situation in the best way they know how or the worst way they know how. Um, so that's why they're super important. The problem with them is that you can't accurately do them in role playing games. And the reason you can't do that is because role playing games are collaborative pieces of mechanics, pretty much. They're collaborative storytelling mechanics that allow you to weave an interactive story with all of your friends. Some playing as a GM who have kind of direct control over the setting, and others who have direct control over the main characters. So, with that being said, it's hard for either of you guys, either the players or the GM, to control a character arc for an NPC or a player, especially the players, because you don't actually have control over most of the plot. You don't know where the plot is going, you don't know how people are going to respond to things, so you don't have the luxury of being able to plot out each individual instance in a plot that will directly correlate with the character arc that you're trying to go for. And because of that, I've created something called an arc concept. And what an arc concept is pretty much a way or a structure. It's a way to structure a character arc and role playing that gives you the general idea of the character arc instead of like an affirmative, this is what it will be, point for point take on what it is. It allows you to take a general idea or a general concept and work it into your game to allow your character to become more dynamic and to become more diverse. So, art concept has 3 steps. But before I get into those steps, I want to tell you guys about the 3 types of character arcs. That way you can understand more, or understand in a much more kind of enlightened way what I'm going for with the arc concepts here. So the 3 type of character arcs are the change, the growth, and the fall. So what are those, right? The change is the most prevalent in all of literature and all of media. It is the hero's journey. It is one person becoming someone completely different by the end of it. You know, it's the PC turning into the Mac. It is the farmer becoming the king, the peasant woman becoming the queen, you know, the villain becoming the hero. It is a complete 180 on who you were to who you are. And normally, the reason for that is because the external forces that have been placed upon you in the position that you are placed into are so extreme that it requires all of who you are to become someone else to fit that description. You know, it is the farmer and all that is a farmer who now needs to become the king and leave all that he was. You know, his innocence, his ignorance to politics, you know, his entire ideology of life and individuals has to alter to take on the serious responsibilities of ruling a nation. So that's pretty much what the change is. If you need like a movie reference, Neo from the Matrix, from A to B, becomes someone completely different by the end of that series. By the end of the trilogy, Neo is unrecognizable from the very first Neo. He was uncertain in the beginning, but he accepts who he is as the one, and accepts all the power, accepts all the responsibility, and sacrifices himself for the good of everybody. Spoiler warning if you've never seen the ending of Matrix. I think it's old enough that I don't need that. But for those of you that have never seen it, there you go. Kills himself at the end. So, going on to growth. Growth is kind of like the change, but on a smaller scale. And what I mean by that is, if the change is to change everything about you to become from one person to another, then growth is to change one thing about you to pretty much stay who you are, but be a better person. To be better than you were. What I mean by that is, there is something about you internally, that some kind of internal hurdle that you need to jump over to be the best that you can be, right? There's something stopping you from reaching the goals that you have set for yourself, whether it be self-doubt, whether it be, not being able to trust people, or maybe it's that you steal things, or maybe it's that you're an alcoholic, or maybe you're addicted to cigarettes, or it's something that is stopping you from going all the way, from becoming the person that you want to be, right? Most heroes from action movies are like that. They have like in Constantine, the last scene where he stops smoking is the sign that he is kind of changed a little bit. He's pretty much still the same person that he is, but he's giving up. He's accepting something. He's coming in. He's learned a lesson and is growing a little bit. He is now better at the end of the story than he was at the beginning, even though he hasn't really changed that much. I assume most heroes and most like badass things are like that. They have that one thing where maybe they're self-sacrificing, always trying to kill themselves, always jumping headfirst into the line of combat but not thinking. And the thing that they have to do is they start plotting things out somewhere along the story. They start trying to think before they move, and that makes them who they want to be. So the last thing is called the fall, and what the fall actually is the tragedy. It is pretty much the change, except the worst possible version of the change. Where the change is the best possible outcome, the fall is the worst possible outcome. So the fall is you ignored all of the lessons that you were supposed to learn. You didn't accept any of the wisdom that was necessary, and therefore did not reach your goal, and may have been giving a much more grim alternative. You've pretty much set in motion a chain and domino effect. You pretty much set in motion a domino effect that will lead to your ultimate demise or doom, pretty much. So, with that being said, we can now go on to the 3 steps necessary to creating an arc concept. So, the 3 steps necessary to creating an arc concept is: 1, you need to create a goal. 2, you need to create a problem that prevents you from reaching that goal. And 3, you need to determine whether or not you reach the goal or whether or not you don't reach the goal. So let's start at number 1, right? Number 1 needs to be emotional. The goal that your character has needs to be tied to their subconscious. It's such a throbbing need, necessity. It's like a lust, something that your character subconsciously has wanted almost for their entire life, right? They want it so bad that they don't even recognize that they want it. Think about like Harry Potter, right? The very first Harry Potter movie, his goal for as long as he could probably remember, was to get love. Love from his parents that he's never had, love of friends, just love. He's always wanted love. It's something that your character wants, it's something that your character needs. So that is the first thing, to decide what your character's goal is. The second thing that you need to do is you need to decide what is preventing your character from gaining the necessary wisdom or gaining that goal. What is stopping them from doing so? And like I've already talked about, the difference between the change and the growth is all of it or one thing. Do they have to change everything about who they are? Do they have to change their complete perspective on things, the way they look at people, their morals? Does everything need to change in order for them to become the person that they want to become? Or is it just one thing? Is there just one emotional hurdle in their way, some negative aspect about them that they need to be able to get over in order to reach the goal that they need to get to? And the last thing is, do they reach their goal? Do they become the person that you saw them becoming? Do they reach that? Do they become that? Or do they become something else, something similar, something they didn't expect? Do they get what they want but not in the way they expected? Or do they not get it at all? Do they ignore all the lessons and wisdom that's coming their way and start going down a darker path that may or may not lead to their ultimate demise? So when you're looking over these things and trying to compile an arc concept, the thing that you want to remember is that when you start all this out, you want to envision who your character is and where you want them to be by the end of it, and leave out the middle. The reason that you're trying to leave out the middle is because you don't want to focus. You don't want to start plotting points and railroading. You want to experience the story as the story happens and use who you want your character to be as a means to stir up drama within your character. It can come out in external things that your character says, maybe a conversation between characters, creating a nice bridge between them, a nice moment, a nice role-playing situation. Or maybe it's something internal, a slight hesitation and courage before the barbarian rushes in to kill the dragon. Instead of the barbarian just going, I'm a badass, and rushing in and killing the dragon, maybe they've been dealing with something that makes them doubt themselves. Maybe they're not 100% confident that they have the power necessary, but they realize that they do, and in that slight second they're battling in their head and they grip their axe tightly and they rush back in just for that slight second. And that adds drama to your descriptions. It adds drama to the whole thing. And not just that, it makes you love your character. It makes you love the world. It makes you love the other characters that participate in your character arcs. It makes you think their characters are dynamic for having their own character arcs. It allows you to look back at the journeys you and your friends have been on with your characters and see how different everybody is and see how different these characters are. It breeds more life and more dynamics, more immersion into the realm of any RPG game. It doesn't have to be a barbarian fighting down a horde of, dragons. It could be, a space wizard fighting some kind of demon from the long before forgotten. It could be anything. But character arcs are a universal concept that I'm just trying to work into the role-playing game so that everybody can experience them and make more dynamic characters. So I do have a few examples for you guys that you guys can kind of understand what I'm trying to say or what I'm trying to go for, and so that I'm not just leaving you in the dark. Now, the first character, her name is Jessie. By the way, I did take a bond and a flaw from the player's handbook, and I used it for the bonds and the goals and the flaws to kind of show you just how basic it can get. You can take this from anywhere. You can think of it and make it as original as you want, or you can pull it out of a book. You can use a generator, whatever you got to do. I handicapped myself and used this book to make it as as simple as possible. So the first one I did, I used the urchin one, and the bond that I got from the urchin one was that she loves her town and she will do anything in her power to defend it. And the second one was that she doesn't trust anybody but herself. So from those two things, I created a background, just a really quick one, that pretty much says that she lived in a very small fishing town, and the town became invaded by the humans that live close nearby. And the reason it became invaded was because the humans were at war with demons that had started spawning in their lands, and they took over the fishing village as kind of like a staging ground to help like bring injured soldiers and feed everybody and send them back into the fray. But they displaced all the people that lived there. They took over their homes, they forced them to continue farming, they took all their food. So these people became poor and kind of just displaced. They couldn't leave into the forest because the elves locked down their forest, preventing any of the humans from going in there and starting to cut down the lumber and stuff like that, and to prevent any demons from following in after them. So everyone was trapped in this town where they were almost like slaves. Not exactly slaves, but pretty much. And so that's kind of the backstory. So here we go. Step 1. Develop a goal. So the goal of this character, from the very fiber of her being, is to remove these people from her lands and to restore the village to, the place that it once was. She grew up with this village being poor, and she's heard so many broken-hearted tales of what this place used to be and what it used to represent, the simple life. She doesn't want to be poor. She wants to live in this town and live in this village. She loves this village, and she wants everybody to be happy, and she feels like the only way for these people to be happy is for these knights to leave. So what is the problem, though? The problem is that because of all the situations that she's been put in, she doesn't trust anybody, right? She only trusts herself. And because she only trusts herself, she realizes that, she has to do this on her own. By trusting other people, it'll only make things worse. And then step 3, the resolution. How does this end? This ends by her getting over her mistrust of other people, by accepting the fact that she can't do this on her own, that she needs to work with other people, that she needs to trust other people, that she herself is not strong enough to remove the knights. Now, maybe in the story she does or does not remove the knights, but either way, she gets over her frustration by going on adventures with these other people and learning to trust them, and learning that she needs to trust people if she wants to get what she wants to do done. So that's one example. Another example I did was with a folk hero. And the folk hero I named Daryl. So Daryl is an orphan, and he was orphaned at a very young age, and in order to cope with himself being orphaned, he created this story where he was someone grand, where he was more than he was. He created these illusions of grandeur and made himself into this legend, made himself into this child who was born by a god and a mortal, or a child who was born to a dragon in human form, or a child who was born to kings who, lost their child in a war, or lost their child in an accident or something. He made himself seem like he was missed and needed, and that his family was powerful. And throughout his life, the stories have just gotten worse and worse and more extreme. And throughout all his life, he's chased all of the lies that he has kind of created. He believes them wholeheartedly, chasing after dragons, thinking that they're his father, praying to gods as if they are his mother, beseeching kings and queens, asking them if they know him or they miss him. So the thing is, though, here's let's go through the steps, right? Step 1. What is his goal? His goal is to find his family. He wants to be accepted by a family. The problem that's preventing him from doing this, though, is that he thinks that he's important. He's unable to accept the fact that he was abandoned as a child and not for any good reason. The end of this, where I see him at the end, is that he accepts the fact that he was abandoned as a child, but he is okay with it because the friends that he has around is enough of the family. He can create his own family from all the people that he'll meet that he loves in his life, like his friends and the other fellow adventurers. Forming a tight bond with them is enough for him to get over the loss of the family that didn't want him. So that's another example. I'm not going to give an example of the fall, because again, I don't think the fall should really be used by anybody except for a DM or a GM, and even the GM should, be very wary on it. The only real person you can use it on is like the villain, and I don't think most of the time the villain is not really around enough for anyone to witness the change, to witness what is happening. You can create a character arc in general and then just summarize what happened to him, but most of the time the players aren't actually going to be able to see it. That's not to say that there aren't people that are creative enough to do it. It's just I don't really think that it's helpful to give you an example of it, because I just don't think that anybody's really going to use it. If anybody wants like a written example, I can prepare one and like post one in the comments or something like that, and I can talk to you guys about it if anybody needs help with it. But other than that, I think those two are pretty good. So yeah, that's pretty much it for this video. I hope you guys get something out of it. I hope it was informative, and I hope it was just interesting. I hope you guys are able to use it. Let me know what you guys think about it in the comment section below. If you guys have used something different, if you guys like the idea of the arc concept. I worked like a week or so on it. I know, a long time, but it was really hard to figure out how to get a character arc in a form that role-playing players can use. So that was really fun to do, by the way. So yeah, if you guys like this video, please like and subscribe, and thank you to all my subscribers. I now have 60 subscribers from 25, which is pretty crazy. It's pretty amazing. So thank you guys for supporting me, and thank you guys for the very kind words. I hope I continue to put out content that you guys love. So thanks. Like, subscribe. If you would share this on Facebook with your friends, that'd be awesome too. But other than that, see ya.